baseball lifestyle. It's my lifestyle.
Interesting week in baseball. Some, we never can have good news. Why can't we ever have good news, Bill? Pitchers and catchers were supposed to report on February the 15th. That didn't happen because we're still in a lockout. And MLB's coming out with all these interesting news things. So I'm just going to start from the top because this kind of happened at the end of last week. They're also meeting today, by the way, which I know we were talking about in previous episodes that they're like low-key meeting and not telling people. I don't think that's the case. Based on the fact that like all the reporters pretty much just like follow around all the executives, I think they're only meeting like once a week. And that's troubling, at least for me. I feel like this is something that they should just be working on nonstop.
I struggle to understand how they're communicating.
Yeah.
And it seems that it's as broken as we've said, right? Like, and the shame of it is that it just doesn't look like they're going to do anything good together, which is my point of everybody's just got to blow this thing up.
Yeah.
Like, just acknowledge that what you have is broken and move on. And then you start hearing the rumors of things that are happening, right? There's a lot of stuff that's happening with minor leagues that's being proposed by the MLB.
Yeah, and it's ugly. I guess there's, in my opinion, I don't like it.
Okay, so what do you not like about it?
Just like seeing all the different stories about minor leaguers and their pay.
Yep.
Them not getting paid at all during spring training is ridiculous. And then I saw I don't know if you saw this guy's thread. I forget his name. I'll pull his name up on Twitter just so I can give him a little shout out.
And just so everybody knows, like the MLB argued and paid a lawyer $750 an hour to argue that minor league baseball players should be considered trainees, like a 14-year-old learning how to flip burgers at McDonald's, and not as professional athletes. And it's like, you have minor leaguers who have been held down by a broken system, who you're not going to pay. So we have a distortion of the fact that if I have a 23-year-old superstar who is on the cusp of coming up, again, we'll use guys who we've talked about before, Spencer Torkelson, right? Like, that guy's not going to get paid, right? Bobby Wood Jr., not going to get paid. These are guys who everybody expects to be in the MLB coming up.
Yep.
Well, but here's the other side that's the downside is the PA has no reason to help these guys because they're not part of the PA for a lot of them. Now, those few guys I just mentioned are on 40-man roster, so now they're part of the MLB Players Association. But they're not going to make a good deal for these young kids.
No.
And this is why minor league guys need to have their own union.
Yeah.
Because they're not being taken care of.
Even remotely.
And there's just such a chasm between the guys who are making the rules, the owners who are making the rules. Like, I'll put this in perspective because I think it's as close as I can make it, right? The difference between an owner of a team and the best player in the league is a smaller gap financially than the best player in the league and the worst player in the league, salary-wise.
Right.
So you've got guys who are making, like Scherzer, who's now negotiating for the PA. He's on that side of everything. Is making $43 million a year. He's going to have made in his career close to $500 million. You have some owners in the league whose total net worth is $1.2 billion. He's half that in career earnings, right? So now we're talking about a guy who's half. You have guys in the league making $500K. That's not half of $500 million that Scherzer has made, right?
Yep.
So the chasm, he's negotiating, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that's normal, that's fine." But Scherzer has no connection to those bottom end guys.
No, none.
And he looks at them and goes, "Guys, you don't even matter." This is what an owner thinks. So the best players in the league negotiate worse for the guys at the bottom than the owners against themselves. It's all broken because you have too wide of a chasm between everybody. And, like, that's the problem, is the guy who's the peak of it is not paying attention to things that are important to the guy at the bottom. And an owner is trying to do it for all of these people. And the guy at the top is like, yeah, but that's not good enough for me. I said, yeah, but what about your teammate who's a 28-year-old guy who has only been up for 2 years and is scratching and clawing and making $690K?
Yep. He's on the verge of going back to the minors half the time, and also has and is under team control for the next 6 years
Until he's 35.
Yeah.
What are you have no connection to that guy. You don't look at him, and you're not negotiating for him either. So you have all of the minor league guys, and then most of the guys at the back end of rosters who are not being negotiated for in what this rule is.
Yep.
By former players and for current players and for people whose objective is to work for the guys who are the top guys.
Yeah.
So we have a has and has nots whole thing on everybody's side. We have the rich owners worth $10 billion versus the poor owners worth a few $100 million.
Mm-hmm. And
then you have the top players, right, worth $500 million versus the bottom players getting paid $70,000 a year in the minors.
Right.
And then lower than that.
And then on top of all that, they're also suggesting that they just want to cut minor league jobs in general, on top of all the other pay cuts and things that they want to do.
Well, so you and I have had that talk before.
Right. So that was the other point of, I don't entirely hate that, from an understanding that we do want to thin out the amount of players and get just some of the highest quality stuff.
Yep.
But on the other side of the guys who do make it to spring training, especially like big league spring training, I was reading this guy's name is Jack Kruger. This guy I was talking about before. As a minor leaguer, he made $480 every 2 weeks. He was in big league spring training every year that he was in the minors so far. He's been in there 7 seasons, got there in 2016. He makes $1,500 a week in spring training. And then in season, $480 every 2 weeks. So that's why he's like, I need this because that's where I'm making the most money out of all my season. Yeah. So he was weighing in on that and just like, guys, like this is just going to ruin so many people. He was living in a 6-person apartment in 2 bedrooms, like, you know, all the minor league horror stories that we hear about. And I think once, on top of all the other issues and things that are not being accomplished, them putting this out there to layer onto that, we already know that the minor leagues are a problem, is souring everybody.
And like, to me, like they just proposed that they're going to pay for guys' housing in season.
Right.
Right. So like the reality is what to me, I actually think that what the owners are doing for the grant for overall is for the betterment of what the minors will be. I don't see any worlds where any player that has a contract with MLB. So like if I'm a trainee, I can go into any team. As soon as you have me on a contract that I can't go to any team, I'm not a trainee, I'm your employee.
Right.
So if I'm your employee, you have to pay me.
Yeah.
Because you're requiring me to come here for this training.
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know the actual, like, structure of how their contracts work, but I have to imagine that it's, hey, you report to spring training, it's unpaid, but it's like part of your lead up to when you do get paid in season.
that can't be a thing.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But that can't be a thing. Like, when you start a job, you come in for training at McDonald's. McDonald's pays you to come in for training.
Right.
So why would McDonald's pay a trainee, but the MLB wouldn't?
That is a great question.
So again, guys, this doesn't make any sense. Like that's a dumb thing to do. I don't know why they're even fighting for it. Because I think the real that they need to do is the minors should be even smaller. And I thought we had done enough last year, but we didn't. It still appears that there's all these like extended spring training situations and, you know, all these other teams. Like the Mets still had multiple like things, right? Yeah, you thinned it out a little bit, but there's still roughly 4 levels. And I think there should be less. Let these guys go to independent ball. Like go make more money. Because the reality is, we talk about it, you go to the independent league, you go to the Ducks in the Atlantic League. The Ducks are paying guys $3K a month, right?
Yeah.
If you're making $3K a month to play for the Ducks, that's better than what you were making $448 every 2 weeks. Why wouldn't I go to that level and do that?
It's a great question. That's to me that seems like the easiest way to eliminate at least like rookie ball.
Yes.
Like those guys go to Florida or whatever, and they're kind of just BSing and playing like essentially like scrimmages.
Well, I think if you're under the age of 20 and you get drafted, I'm fine with you going to an instructional component to what this is.
Right.
So being in, for the Mets example, just because I know their affiliates better, you go to St. Lucie where they have their primary spring training facility, and that's where their minor league guys are going to be and going to practice and do everything. So if you're a younger guy and you're there and you're competing with the other younger guys, you're occasionally doing some scrimmage stuff with other teams, and you're just getting instruction, you're lifting weights, you're trying to better yourself. Great. But hard, like, minor league system, like high A, double A, like A, double, triple, done. Some of this, like, in-between stuff just doesn't make sense. And then how many guys you're allowed to have in instructs should just shrink.
Yeah.
But nobody really wants that because the reality is they want more players that they can develop for the future. Well, you and I in past episodes have said all the GMs and all the talent evaluators in the MLB suck. Because you guys have 150 people in your minor leagues, and you like 10 of them you're going to end up having at the MLB level. Like, if I took a snapshot of the Mets' whole affiliate like system today, 10 of those guys at max will ever have a cup of coffee.
You know what's interesting too, and I think it's something that the PA is arguing about, is being able to bring players up and down. Big problem. Apparently, not apparently, it's unlimited right now for how many times you can bring players up and down. And like, I was reading about this yesterday. Like, you can bring a guy up, right? And for example, let's say Tyler McGill, when he was first getting brought up, right? He could come up, make a start, and go back down, and that only counts as 1 day of service time. And they can just mess with that and do all that stuff. And then you get guys who kind of have that little bit, like a cup of coffee or whatever, couple days, and then they're kind of sucked back into the minor league thing and never really see the free agency or kind of any of this stuff. And like they're back into their weird little like minor league deal, and it's kind of just this little like cycle, and you only get like the 1 or 2 guys that you're talking about that really kind of make it through and get to push their needle of like their career.
And that's why I look at it and I say that the MLB's fighting a dumb battle in that sense. But then I also read an article that somebody put up the other day talking about the guys who were in between. And this goes back to, and I would probably want to call Shawn and see if maybe he was stuck in that limbo. Shawn's deal was going to make it that he had signed early enough. But if you have a guy who was a free agent, so the Mets traded for Trevor or something last year. We got him in that trade. He was an older reliever, like 26, and we had traded for him midseason. So I forget exactly what his name was. But the Mets traded for a guy. He pitched for us out of the bullpen. He doesn't have a deal right now. But because he had an MLB deal last year, he's not allowed to talk to teams because of the lockout.
Oh, damn.
But he's looking for a minor league deal.
Right.
So he can't get a job.
Oh, it's so annoying.
So he can't play minor leagues, even though he's going to sign a minor league deal. Because he was an MLB guy. But he doesn't have enough stuff to get paid by the PA. So the PA right now is paying the players.
Oh yeah?
They're giving the players some money.
Okay.
So the players are earning some money from the Players Association that they kind of collected as their dues.
Gotcha.
Right? And now they're feeding that money back slowly to all of the players in a relative balance so that guys have funds to kind of live life.
Right.
Right? He doesn't fall in that.
Because he didn't have enough service time?
Whole deal.
Wow.
So he's stuck in limbo where the PA can't pay him.
You talking about Robert Stock?
No.
Trevor Williams.
I think
Trevor Williams. Okay.
See, I was right with Trevor.
Okay.
He got paid. He has not made enough money, hasn't done enough things. He's stuck in a limbo, and the PA can't help him, and he can't play minors and make money. Even though he's going to be a guy who's going to sign a minor league deal. Wild.
That's super weird.
That's
so crazy.
That's how broken the system is.
It is super.
And guys, understand. You guys are trying to keep a half-sunk ship alive. It's eventually going down.
Yeah.
just sink it and rebuild a ship.
The way they've kind of structured this whole thing so that they have the max control and it's all interwoven and all this stuff is now coming to light of the fact that it is completely constructed poorly.
Yeah. So, like, this is the only way to force the owners to do it would be to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Supreme Court could go and say that there's antitrust rules that are at play here.
Well, isn't the MLB the only one that's exempt from that?
But, like, we could run this back again. Like, and that was the minor league, but that's the minor league guys. I'm not even saying the minor league guys. Okay. I actually think the MLB is kind of bordering on the function of, do they have antitrust with what they're doing? They've organized in good faith that they have an uncapped league, but then they have a luxury tax that limits the ability for anybody to go there.
Right.
So now players can't earn maximums, but there's no minimums that the teams have to spend. Mm-hmm. So inherently, the owners have manipulated the market to make it that there's not enough money in the system. Right. We talked about that again last episode or the episode before that. If every team in the league had to spend $90 million, would that be more or less than they spent last year? Deets, can you pull up what total salaries were last year?
Yep. I think we talked about this in the last episode. I think it was like 10 teams or something would need to spend more money.
We said 10 teams would have to spend more money, but my question is, if we said, okay, like every team in the league spends $90 million versus whatever they spent last year, separate from luxury tax.
So we're saying
everyone
90 million plus?
Yes.
It's a lot of teams. League average for 26-man payroll.
No, just what was the gross salaries?
For the teams that spent less than 90?
No, I want to know gross salaries last year. Just how much did owners spend last year?
Oh, total payroll.
Total payroll. There
Gotcha.
we go.
There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that were under 90 last year. One of them.
No, what was gross salaries? I don't need any of those numbers. I need gross salaries last year for all the teams.
I would have to add up 30 numbers then. It's going to take a while.
Just copy it into a spreadsheet. Go gadget. Because if we did $90 million times 30 teams, right, we're talking about $2.7 billion
in full for the league?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking $2.7 billion would be the number. So what was actually spent last year? Right?
Well, like 400 of that's in the top 2, right? Roughly?
Not counting their luxury tax. If you take away their luxury tax. So, like, the luxury tax is my point. That's not actually salaries. That's just... That's all of the money that then gets put in. Mm-hmm. So they did $4 billion last year was total spend, right? So $4 billion. So if I just put a 90, we're at 2.7.
Right.
And there's how many teams that were above 200?
That's 250.
Right? So we look at it and we say that there are 5 teams that are over 200.
Right.
Right? So just those teams are $1 billion by themselves.
Yep.
So if you made a salary floor of 90, there'd be more money for all the players. Everything changes.
Do you think it's hard for the the Orioles to get up to maintain that as a small market
I don't
team?
care.
Well, so
I don't think that
that's a perfect segue.
I don't think that the Baltimore Orioles are a small market.
I don't think so either. Actually,
how do the Baltimore Ravens function?
For sure. So my thought is, and this was the more people I think are starting to propose this. Sell your team if you can't handle it.
We've said this before.
We've said it before, yeah.
Well, we're making concessions for poor owners. And we're allowing people to do it because there's so much history in the game of baseball that everybody's afraid of taking teams away from people.
Yep.
When they're not running it optimally. Could you imagine any team in the NFL operating as poorly from a financial standpoint as the Baltimore Orioles? Like the Detroit Lions are on the cusp every year of being taken over by the NFL. Mm-hmm. Every year. Because they're the only team that loses money in the league. Only team. And they're better run and have a higher payroll than everything that you see in the MLB.
Yep.
And the MLB is just terrible. The entire system is dumb. There's no worse professional sports league than the MLB. And I don't want to hear PA and everybody else would hear me say that and be like, that's wrong. That's not true. Guys, show me. You have
look at what we're looking at right now in terms of your conversations and trying to reorganize the league. It is obviously not doing well.
And you guys can't do it.
Yes.
So the NFL, we talk about, all of the playoff games were decided by 3 points.
Yeah.
Except for the best game, which was the Bills-Chiefs. That was 6 points. You want to talk about parity?
Sorry.
It's cool. I'm over it. You want to talk about parity of a league, though?
Yeah.
The Super Bowl, everything, you pretty much, based off of how every game ended up playing out, you could make a case that 8 different teams could have won the Super Bowl this year.
Easily, absolutely.
I can't say that about baseball. We were talking about the Dodgers all the way through until the Dodgers lost.
Well, actually, hang on. I think, looking at last season,
Sure.
there were actually a lot of teams that you could say were all right, cool, they might have a chance, right?
Sure.
But then the fall off was massive. Whereas the NFL, there was a lot of fringe teams that was all right, cool, if they get in, they could be a scrappy team and get all the way.
The Chargers missed the playoffs.
Yep.
Right? The Chargers missed the playoffs, and people were like, oh, that's a great team. No great team missed the playoffs in baseball.
No.
Because you have just such a stark contrast. The Jets were bad. Sorry.
It's okay.
But, the Jets did more to try to win than the Orioles did last year by leaps and bounds.
Oh, for sure.
No, it's not allowed to function that poorly. You want to go to soccer. Soccer is run better. UFC is run better. Right? The only sport that might have worse management is boxing.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that's true anymore.
But it's so different.
I don't even know if that's
boxing
true anymore.
Boxing is a sport that's just changing so ridiculously, where it's I would say the mainstream fan, the casual boxing fan, doesn't watch Gervonta Davis fight.
Sure.
They're watching Jake Paul.
Yeah.
They're watching all that crap.
Yeah.
And so it's not. It's definitely the fair weather boxing fan is more the thing than there's not as many new I love boxing, I'm only watching boxing type
Or
thing.
more of a Mayweather boxing fan.
Yes, Dennis, thank you.
But Jake Paul has done more positive for boxing
oh yeah,
in the last 2 years than any boxer in the last 30. The only boxer I could tell you that has promoted and enhanced the notoriety financials of boxing to the degree he has was Mike Tyson. Now, you could say Mayweather was close, right? But Mayweather dominated so much and picked and chose his way through and was very calculated at all times that he finessed a great career. But, heavyweights rule boxing. And Tyson was heavyweight. Jake Paul comes in, small dude. He's setting up fights that sell.
Yeah.
And he's paying these dudes big money. So he's literally out here, and he talked to Dana White. He's like, Dana, you got guys who are making no money. They've all got full-time jobs, and they fight in the UFC. And, that's a league that's going to need some reform at some point in time because there's so much money that's going to the promotion. Not enough is making its way to the fighters.
Yeah. And I think they're close to that, too.
But they're still run better than the MLB. And that's the point. So we have some of the shadiest sports in existence fighting.
Baseball lifestyle, it's my lifestyle.